Storytelling is connection currency, we call it. And the better you're able to understand yourself, the better you're able to connect with others, the more success you have in life, right? And it's that simple.
Okay, before we jump in today, I want to give a little background on our guest. I could not be more excited to have Dan Negroni on today. We met maybe 12 years ago. I hired him a few years ago as a coach when I was a little bit stuck. And he was honestly, you guys, pivotal in my career and just life in general. So you're going to want to listen all the way through. He touches on tactical ways to identify your strengths and, more importantly, how to make sure those strengths don't become weaknesses. This was the huge aha for me in working with him, and it was so incredibly powerful. And again, it just completely shifted my life. It was amazing. So anyway, background on Dan. He is a people activator. He is a speaker, an executive coach, a CEO, and he's author of a book called Chasing Relevance: 6 Steps to Understand, Engage, and Maximize Next Generation Leaders in the Workplace. Such a great book in general on leadership. I just reread it, got so much good stuff out of it. Dan unveils the art and science of building a people-focused formula that thrives on connections and relationships. This is really his specialty, connecting and relationships, which is so important in this early stage funding process, right? He also helps early stage entrepreneurs use narrative psychology to craft compelling stories that connect with investors and help them get funded. Dan has catalyzed billions of dollars in growth and transformed countless organizations. So go to his website, dannegroni.com. I swear he's worked with like every company under the sun. Amazing human. Let's dive in. Dan Negroni, so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah,
How you doing today?
Nothing like just being spontaneous. There we go.
I love it. I know it's been a little too long. Right before we hopped on, I looked back and it's been 2 years since
God.
I know, it's that crazy.
It's, as they say, it's been a minute.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was like, it's that old saying of you overestimate what you can do in a year and you underestimate what you can do in 5 years. And looking back to when you and I were talking and I was working with you, I never would have thought like so much has changed. So Huge thank you. You were pivotal in all those changes. So I cannot thank you enough. It's
you did the work and you were a great client and you are a great client. And I know you have it in you, as do you.
Thank you. No, it was fun. It's been a good couple years and out of COVID. Luckily, I was like, wow, we were deep in COVID at that point too. So that was a tough time, COVID. I think the world doesn't realize how much of a lasting effect that COVID has had on it. There's kind of like a time warp. And I think generally the world feels super lonely. And so I'm glad you're doing the podcast to bring people together. Yeah, no, I think that's true. The whole work from home thing, it is a chance to like get out. It's like the new networking, I feel like a little bit,
It isn't. It isn't. It's interesting. I had lunch with a new group that's trying to launch a new networking group for actually C-level executives pretty much around the world, and kind of not really YPO, not really Vistage, but they were saying that there really is, and I think the research shows, a loneliness epidemic.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think it's for people of all ages, not just senior people, which is interesting, but like the very junior people. I have a son that just started work about a year ago and he's never been in an office. It's kind of crazy.
Whoa. That is crazy.
Crazy.
Wow. That is nuts. Yeah, that's a different world for sure. Yeah. I don't miss the office, but I think it's different, kid home, all that kind of stuff. If you're like 22, I'd want to be in an office.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
If you're 20, he's 23.
23.
It's tough to never go to the office, never have people around. Like he goes to one of the social clubs. I think it's in Salt Lake Edison Club, like a Soho house. And he works from there and he really tries to get out. But the fact that you could start work and not be around people. I mean, remember back from your early days, how much traveling you were doing when you were working for Burton. And I mean, to
Oh,
never see people, it's crazy.
yeah. Going
Yeah.
to work every day was like a
Yeah.
social party. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
blast.
It's fun.
It
Yeah,
is.
for sure.
Crazy. Well, it's funny. I just read your book, which was
Oh my
super
goodness.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
super
now
cool.
we're really dating ourselves. That's been more than a minute. I think it came out in 2016. So it's a while.
Oh, that's not too bad. Or I don't know, maybe not. But yeah, I guess it is 8 years. Well, all still super relevant. Like there's totally stuff
Yeah.
in there
People
I'm going to
stuff
like pull
doesn't
out.
change.
Yeah.
I think we really forget that the science of people is about 40, 50 years old. I mean, even longer when you look at Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill, but certainly the science of Gallups and strengths and, Myers-Briggs and all these assessments, we know what to do with people. We just don't do it. So no matter what generation. And so it's kind of sad. Hopefully we'll continue to do that a little more.
Well, it's funny because, in looking at this podcast and it being about seed money in that very early stage, as I was going through your book, I'm like, everything that you focus on is so relevant because seed money is not really actually it's partially about money and business, but so much of it is about conveying your story and building relationships and how you're perceived. Like that early stage for investors is so much an emotional decision,
Yeah,
just as
which
much
is
as a
exactly
financial.
kind of what we even worked on after the fact, after you were so successful on Shark Tank and in many other ventures. However, you gotta know who you are, and you gotta, storytelling is connection currency, we call it. And the better you're able to understand yourself, the better you're able to connect with others, the more success you have in life, right? And it's that simple from every relationship. If you're starting a company, both internally to the company and externally to your venture source, to your money funds, to the seed, and to your clients, right? So really storytelling through, narrative psychology, which is just, if we tell a story, do we believe it? Can we get others to believe it? Can we get people to understand how we can help them thrive and survive in all those different roles? So, it's super critical for sure.
So on the storytelling side, what
Yeah.
would you say? And I want to get into your story
Yeah.
after, but I think this
Oh,
is
my
such
story's boring, but
Oh, no,
yeah.
it's not. It's so
No,
good.
no,
It's
no.
so
We
good.
talk about how we help others with stories here.
Well, but so, okay, let's say you're an early stage entrepreneur and you're getting ready, to go out, pitch investors for the first time. One thing even kind of that I want to dive into is like the idea of how people perceive you. I think that is so fascinating because I just think it's fascinating because I have no idea how this podcast will be perceived. I have no idea how, and depending on who's watching it, right? So it's very hard, I think, to figure out how you're actually perceived. And most of the time I'd like to say, well, who cares? But in this situation of pitching investors and trying to find mentors and bring experts on your team, like you kind of need to know how you're perceived, right? So what advice or how would you tell people who are in that position where they have to go out and pitch and build a team? Like how can they understand a little bit more how they're perceived so they can improve themselves where they need
I'm thinking
to?
like that question is, like a bomb relative to, what you would ask. And, the first thing that comes to my mind is, look, it's not about you, but actually when you're investing in someone, it is partially about that person. I would think the first thing that I needed to learn, and I think people need to learn about storytelling, is it's not about you. It is about you, but it's only about you and the reference and frame of what you can do to serve your audience, right? What are you going to do to be a great investor? What is your idea? Why is it great? How do you articulate it? And so really the communication of the story is about you, but it needs to be framed where you take yourself and your ego out of the question. And it's about the value you can produce to make the audience thrive and survive. And so I think there's a real art and a nuance between understanding how to do that. And so in order to pitch or tell your story, right, you have to not be too much. You can't be too little. You have to really, really understand what the audience needs from you. So it's really important, as you know from Shark Tank, to get your pitch and get your story down straight so it's received well. But really what's most important is what's in it for them, what's in it for the audience, and how they receive it. So the audience is really the hero of any story you're going to tell. And I think, we talked about that when we were coaching too, which is how does the entrepreneur understand that that is true, yet really do a pitch where they give it credence and all the special and unique tools that they do to make it really resonate with the audience.
Crazy. Yeah, I definitely remember going through that quite a bit.
And then it's painful. I don't know if you remember that I think I have 4 or 5 new coaching clients where we're just in the story stage. And, we take people through a system, which is from the inside out, how to figure out who you are so that you can then express your value, which is what are your strengths, what are your values, what are your skills, what are your passions, what are your talents, and what about them is relevant to others. Not what's relevant to you, how you want to hear yourself talk, which is why I say to you, my story is kind of boring. It's only boring because I'm much more concerned about what do you, the audience, what do the people listening need from me? And as you do this podcast, you'll really figure out what your vibe is, what your isms are like, and the cadence. And the first ones you'll see you'll feel they're horrible because you didn't feel like you had enough laboratory experience, kind of like your first pitch. It sucks, but without that first pitch, where would you be? Because what would you have learned about what people really need from you? And so we're so tough on ourselves. Entrepreneurs are so tough on themselves. But thinking about the expression of value you provide and the connection as a learning experience as well, I think is really, really critical to any entrepreneur. And most entrepreneurs have thick skin because they're brazen and they're sharp and, they're go-getters. However, if you really can understand the intentionality behind the process and what you're trying to do, imagine if you had that foresight before you got to the end. And I think sometimes for entrepreneurs and all of us starting new ventures, it's kind of a little bit difficult to be told that at the beginning until you experience it, right?
Totally.
So you don't know. I mean, and you came to me successful, had pitched your story. And when we got together and we started doing the coaching afterwards, it's like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? What's wrong with the story? Remember? It's like, this is so hard. And it was really us pulling out and figuring out, all the wounds, all the laboratory experience, all those things, and figuring out who am I really and how do I want to express this to the world? So I'm so glad you're doing that and going to be vulnerable about it. It's work and it takes time and it's not easy, but it sure is fun.
Yeah. No, I definitely remember that process and I would be like, oh my God, I have to it's so hard, but so important.
I really suck at this. This is horrible. And do you remember what I kept saying, which is, look, this is you. You know this. You got this. You got, I got your back. You got your back. We're going to figure this out. Let's just go through the process and have the pain. But when you say to someone, even like yesterday, I did it 3 times. What are your skills? What are your values? And people are like, oh, values. What are your passions? Passions? What do you mean by passions? It's like, we all know what a passion is. And so, really figuring out what you're great at, how you want to articulate that to the world, what your why is, what the meaning behind it is, and how you wrap it up in a great story that gets people emotionally connected, right? That limbic part of the brain, which says, oh, I want that. I want that person, right? You see it on Shark Tank all the time where they're like, I don't know about the business. I don't know about anything, but you, and that's probably what Mark said to you. You're an entrepreneur. I want to get behind you. I love what you do. I think he said, my wife drinks that stuff. There's got to be a market for it. I'm feeling that emotional connection. Let's do it. Right?
Yep. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that helped me in that process so much, and I've recommended this so many times since working with you through that, is the strengths test.
Yeah.
So that is,
so,
love that test. It's so powerful. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Let's talk about it. So I didn't know you that well. I mean, you'd come and you'd spoken to a group of millennials at Launchbox, which was super nice of you. And you were super impressive and everyone loved it. It was a great night, but we didn't know each other that well. And so in order for me to figure out how to help you know yourself, I kind of need something to work off of. Now, I'm super good at being able to kind of, after 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 of doing strength finders for people, I can ask certain questions and kind of feel my way around it. However, Strength Finder is this test that's been around, Strength Finder, I think 2.0. It's a book or you can get it online and you have 34 strengths. And basically it's an assessment which you actually answer questions. So it's, it's about your behavior and your thoughts about yourself at that moment in time, about what are your top 5 strengths. And so it really is an amazing foundation to start to work with someone and to ask them questions and to get them to know them. And the little I knew about you and the experience we had, plus that test, almost allows me to be almost clairvoyant, right? In a way, like it's almost like a business horoscope where within an hour, I'm like, oh no, I know you're exactly this and let's explore it together and let's figure it out. So there really, there's gold or platinum in those hills. And it's just a base. There are tons of Myers-Briggs. There's, the DISC assessment. There's more meteor assessments like the Hogan assessment and things like that. But I love Strength Finder because it's pure. It's simple. There are only 5. They're pretty easy to understand. Even though your description is like you're only the same 34 strengths as 1 in 11 million and like 50 million, 60 million people have taken Strength Finder. It's such a rich tool and it can be taught to high school kids, which we've done many, many times, all the way through, octogenarians, if you will. And so there's just such a value in having a foundation or a base point for you to kind of understand a little bit about what do I think I'm really good at and why? And then we get in, you remember we do add-ons, which is what are your values? What are your skills? What are your passions? Which really deduces, kind of your why, or there's science behind that. Goes back to Viktor Frankl's mad search for meaning, like logotherapy. What really drives this is what means something. And you had some really meaningful stuff for you about how you wanted to impact the world and make a difference. I think this podcast is one of them. Let's have you share it for sure after this. And then it's, okay, well, how do we put that all together, right? So it build, so we can share with other people to move forward to do something. Yeah. Do you remember? Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be completely honest with you and vulnerable is we friggin' fell into it. Like we had a laboratory. We decided we were going to use Strength Finders. We decided what were the brand words. We brought people together in these sessions and they coached each other. And so then they learned how to coach themselves by understanding these things. And it really brought people together and it brought people of any generation, any diverse perspective together. And it was awesome. And it is awesome. And it still works today. So it's just really begging, borrowing, and stealing and nicely from all other books and people to just give people a nice understanding of themselves so they can connect.
One of the things that I remembered from that too is how much my strengths can be my biggest weaknesses.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's called basements and balconies. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. And it honestly, like that test has become a little bit of a North Star for me these past 2 years because I'm now hyper aware of, like, for me, for example, I love the process and the journey more than achieving an end result. And now I look back on my career, I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, I could see that many times. But now I realize I have to have that process as part of my, annual goals and like going after that new thing to be able to like feel satisfied and love that. And I'm really good at that
so the
part,
process is part of your journey. It's what proves to you that you're making an impact because you can see the steps and it's really critical. However, you need to tell yourself all the time, hey, don't get caught up in the process. The process is here for a reason. Let's understand it, but you got to make something happen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Super powerful.
That's the gift. And people take it away in all their own shapes and sizes and colors. And I love it about that. And I think it's really important for entrepreneurs that are asking other people for money and to invest in them to really at least have a platform for who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. And I think when that comes across more authentically, you probably are much better able to achieve funding. If you can articulate that to someone, most of the time what's happening is people are getting a gut feel, right, about what it does along with the product. However, what I love and I think colleges should do and MBA programs and around the world are really focus on teaching those types of skills to people, because that's what really gives you the edge, in the workplace, no matter what job you're doing. But certainly if you're an entrepreneur and your job is about influencing, right? Not only in new product, new ideas, innovation, hiring teams, closing deals, but raising money. And so more intentionality is way better, and it starts from within.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that. So, okay, let's back up a little bit and hear your story, because I think you have a great story. And what I would personally love to hear a little bit is, I think you made a really big career change, right?
Many really big career changes, yeah.
And I think a lot of, people in this early stage are, they're at that pivotal point of like, how do I pursue my dream or stay doing kind of what I'm doing? So share a little bit about your story and that, those moments that nudged you to pivot and make a huge pivot that you did.
And I don't even think I understood why. I have Activator as like one of my number one strengths. So I always need to be moving and activating. And it probably was because I was just trying to prove something to myself about how smart or how successful, and just, always trying to slay it. Now I understand much more clearly about the strengths and, when it's in its basement, I'm activating too much, right? I'm just moving for the sake of motion. However, I did want to prove something to myself, which is I come from a kind of screwed up family, and I wanted to prove that I could be successful economically and as a leader, like to really help other people, whether it was through products or services or leading teams. And so I started out, believe it or not, trying to do what every good Jewish boy is supposed to do, which is get an education. And so I was fortunate enough to go to Georgetown for law school. And my God, it seems like the dark ages. I think I graduated, not in the 80s, but close, in 1990, before we even had computers or emails and things of that nature. And, I really thought the foundation was education. And so I became a corporate lawyer, which I loved a lot of things about it, certainly learning and the knowledge. And more importantly than anything, I think what it taught me was how to approach problem solving. It teaches you this thing in first year called IRAC, Issue, Rules, Analysis, Conclusion, which is really just like any consultant comes to solve a problem. What are the issues? What are the rules? How do I analyze them? And how can I make a conclusion? So had a really, really strong basis in how to approach problem solving, and a huge need to prove myself and succeed. So strategically was going to find a way, and strategic is one of my strengths too. As water comes down a mountain because of gravity, I was going to find a way to solve a problem. And so I was also super impatient, as I talked about activation. And so fortunately, I had some great clients who sold businesses and made a lot of money and took me into the tech world with them. And I got to do sales, which is really the root of what I love to do. I was selling garments at flea markets and hot dogs off the street in New York City at the age of 15 with a great friend of mine named Bruce, and doing all sorts of entrepreneurial things, and always an influencer even in the law area, really connecting with the clients and building relationships. And so I got to move over to the business side and become a sales leader and a leader of companies, a manager early on, very early in my career. Probably now everyone, it's normal. You can be a manager and a leader by 30 easily, right?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Crushing things. But back then it was a little bit more, you had to wait your time. And I got to do that. And I got to focus on building relationships, both with teams that led sales teams and, other teams that were producing software. We were selling software. We were selling technology. And I did that for a while. I got the good fortune to be a lawyer and become involved in sales and running a huge business that grew to be almost $1 billion in sales, which was not tech. Kind of went back to just brick and mortar, which was RVs and selling RVs, which was really fun and cool. And then a lot more tech companies and some defense related, some healthcare related. And at the end, or closer to my journey to become a coach and a speaker and what I'm calling a people activator, right? To get people to activate their teams internally and their relationships with clients or funders or all those things. So eventually I left business and said, I'm going to start my own business, and it's going to be about people, and it's going to be about teaching people how to activate themselves. And at the time, this generational gap was really prevalent, and you couldn't go anywhere without someone complaining about a millennial and how horrible they were. And I just didn't believe that. And maybe it's because I'm still trying to look like a millennial, even though I'm boomer-esque and approaching 60, which is crazy to think about.
You definitely don't seem there.
No, thank you. But I really believe that my kids were graduating college, my first kid, and there was a need for him to figure out how to articulate all his value and to connect with the older generation. And so we actually wrote a book, developed in the laboratory of training thousands and thousands of people. We worked with the Honor Foundation, moving vets from deployment to employment, like special ops vets, which was super cool. And we built a process and we wrote a book, and then we built a business working with some of the largest companies in the world, from Lexus to, Booz Allen Hamilton to UBS to Merrill Lynch to all sorts of crazy companies, healthcare companies, Smith and Nephew, blah, 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 blah. And this, as my son says to me, Dan or Dad, your shit works. I don't know what it is about it is, but it works. And works enough for him to be in the President's Club, I think maybe 5 years in a row at his company. And my younger one's kind of coming up in sales as well. And it just was about really finding a bridge to bridge the gap between all sorts of people so they could connect and create exponential growth and success and results. And that's kind of how Launchbox was born, and that's how the book was built, and that's how we met. And I still get the amazing fortune to be able to go out there and talk about those things and coach people. We have like a breakthrough coach thing where we just do an hour with people, and it kind of sets them on fire and launches their life. And that's a really cool product. And it's just, it really is about people activation. Look, here's the thing that I find it'll be interesting for your entrepreneurs at this moment in time, at this moment in history. The largest transformation we're ever going to have in the business world, the largest transition of money from one generation to another, exponential growth and change in tech, and it ain't getting slower at any minute. And so we're really struggling with where do tech fit and where do human fit. And I think the bridge is more than millennials and older people. It's how do we bridge humans and technology? And so how do we do that in a way where we really understand that our people are the most important asset, either customers or whatever. And so how do we create a connection? How do we activate people so they understand that, they embrace it, and they could use it for good, not evil, but good? And I think, those companies that really understand how to connect people with technology in a really progressive way, where they understand it, they lean into it, they look at it as innovation, there's tons of opportunity. And for those companies that don't, I'm not going to say there's death, but it ain't going to be pretty. And so, I think I was a little bit ahead of my time, kind of understanding that. And here's the other thing, I think for all the entrepreneurs out there, people activation and dealing with other people, if I said the audience is the hero of the story, it's personal. So you receive it different than I receive it, right? And the next 10 people will. And so when you have these big workplaces or you're trying to motivate all these people, you have to understand that each of them are motivated or have to motivate themselves different personally. I talk about it like, you ever take a Peloton? Do you have a Peloton at home? Or,
yeah, have one. Yeah.
So if you know Matt Wilpers, Matt's talking to a million people, right? And he has to motivate each and every one of them, but yet each and every one of them is so different. And so it's kind of the Pelotonization of the workforce, right? And they're using technology to do it in a workout. And we got to feel really good about how do we do that in our businesses. And so I just think that's the big challenge. And the real success will be how you activate people. And, what's your formula to do that? So anyway, not that
Very
I care
cool.
about or passionate about this stuff at all.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's funny. Like you can't do anything without being a technology company, without having some elements of technology in there. And I think that even takes it a step further.
Yeah.
That it's like you have to bridge the gap between your people and technology and like you said, I'm sure it's just going to go further and further and faster and faster.
People feel like they're being, their jobs are getting, you look at even at McDonald's, you go in and you have less people at the counter or Shake Shack and you're popping in your menu and robots are doing things and look at ChatGPT and crazy. Like if I want to do a new topic or twist on a presentation, I can put in my old one and boom, say, do this, make it more vanilla, make it more strawberry, make it more this, and you know what I mean, kind of by those things. And so it's just amazing how much value and time that saves for us to really being good at making things personal to each client, right? The data that we are harvesting and understanding who likes to shop at what time, right? And what night and in what regions things are different or what types of people are buying certain types of things or how long it takes them to close and all. I mean, it's unbelievable what you can do now. And so we got to figure out a way selling is usually not, especially with more expensive things, people want to talk to people. And so how do we figure that out? I just think it's super fascinating. And if we think we can treat our people like shit and just walk away and it's all going to work, not so much.
Yeah. I think people have so many options nowadays too. Yeah. Like you said, with all the transfer of wealth, all of the businesses that boomers are going to be leaving behind. There's so many opportunities out there. People have so many choices. They're not going to stay anywhere where they're treated poorly.
And that's the key for all your entrepreneurs out there that are trying to get seed capital. It's about reframing life as that opportunity. And it's about really approaching that opportunity with the right mindset, right? With a growth mindset and with a realism that it ain't about you. It's about the audience. And so what the heck are you going to do to help your audience thrive and survive? And I think that's Donald Miller talks about that. He's got a book on storytelling too, which is interesting. It's not kind of as visceral and as personal. And, some people say, oh, don't get so vulnerable. But, bullshit to that, because you got to figure out who you are, right? They say put your oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. You kind of got to put that oxygen mask of understanding who you are before you can connect with other people, because otherwise they see through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you that too. Like, what do you see as kind of the right level or the importance of, transparency and vulnerability in building relationships these days?
Yeah. So, right. As I said earlier, too much is too much sometimes, right? And so you want to be vulnerable in a way where you've received permission, I think, from the person to be vulnerable, that they're ready to hear it, that you're not going to bleed all over somebody. and that your vulnerability is actually going to serve them and your empathy is going to provide value to them. And so no one wants to hear a woe is me story, although people do want to help if they can. And so, it really is just getting adept at assessing what does the person need from me and where are they? And are they willing? And what do I need? And how do I, again, bridge the gap? Because there will for sure be a gap, and there are appropriate times to do it, and then there are not appropriate times to do it. I do think that in the traditional world, with traditional performance management reviews and traditional ways that you approach to your relationship with your boss, you never mix the two. You are different. And you would say, are you different personally and professionally in the audience? When I was doing a keynote, and, it's getting fewer and fewer because we're getting smarter and smarter about how interconnected we are as humans. You don't change, right? Especially now that you had pajamas on bottom, business on top,
Yeah.
right? You're the same person. You're going from your kitchen to your, spare bedroom or office to work. And so we understand we're the same personally and professionally. And so I think vulnerability is an interesting thing. And, it's about EQ. It's about understanding what the person needs from you. So again, these skills of building the bridge, they're so critical. And the way we communicate and what someone needs, right? Some people are not going to like a person like me who's like, energy and blah. And so if you're selling to a person like that, or you're coaching a person like that, you really have to start, and got to get a lot of words out quickly. But you got to figure out, how do I take a breath and not suck all the air out of the room, create space for who's there and all those things. And so, look, my other friend told me this today, which I loved. He said he was doing a hike and he saw this on a bench and it said, kindness is the new competitive edge.
Wow, I love that.
And I just love that. It's kind of like a goosebump moment, and it goes to people activation. I'm just trying to figure out, how am I a little more kind? Yet still me, still bold. Like this morning I had someone who was trying to pitch me something, and by the 8th slide, I'm like, okay, you've said nothing. You've had 8 slides. What are you looking for from me? Please, because if you're trying to sell something or you want me to do something for you, help me understand what you need from me. So now the person said, thank you for the feedback. Now they may have been just being kind, but I was really trying to figure out, how do I share that value with them without hurting them, but yet telling them firmly, like, your story is bad. For the entrepreneur that's going for funding is like, your story, you told me the same thing 5 times over. The person who set the call told me that stuff. How about 1 or 2 sentences of what you'd like from me to provide you value for, and how we go about doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense. And it's funny, I think, like you said, with all that, the right balance of vulnerability, but then also to a certain extent, you are who you are and being authentic to who you are. And certain investors just aren't going to be into it, right? And so it's a numbers game too, of finding the ones that that relate to you and that appreciate your personality and who you are and what you're doing, right?
100%. I have this shirt my wife bought me. She thought it was a joke, and I kind of got insulted the first time, maybe a little triggered. But now, and my buddy laughs at me all the time because I'll wear it to the gym, and it says, "I'm not for everyone." You know what? I'm okay. I'm not for everyone. I'm for people that really want to empower themselves and want to take on hard work and look at it and share value and be vulnerable at a certain level, but make an impact and difference. And so that's not everyone. Not everyone wants that, and that's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means maybe not for me. That's okay. Not to be rude to, not to pass over, to treat with kindness, but it's okay. And I think the same is true when you're pitching investors. And so you tell me, actually, this is a good question for you, isn't there homework you can do before you get to people to understand who's the right shark for me? Who's the right investor for me? No?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I think it was doing your homework, but ultimately it's a numbers game, and so for every no that I got, it was just like, okay, one step closer to the yes, because even when I thought that somebody was like, oh my gosh, they are perfect, they're going to totally get this, they're going to totally understand it, they're like, whatever, I thought about them, they could be like going through a divorce. They could have just been burned by, a similar thing. Or so there's so many variables that it's just so key to wear that shirt you're talking about and just not take it personally, because you just can't take it personally. You just got to like keep
that
going.
Shirt in the grocery store. They're like, oh, that's me. But there's this, it reminds me, so I get the good fortune in my job to be able to listen to or read about 3 books a week. And so one of my really good ones that you kind of reminded me of, which I think is a great book for entrepreneurs to look at. Do you know who Jamie Kern-Lima is from It Cosmetics?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. She's amazing.
So her book is great. Her first book.
I haven't read it yet. I'm dying to read it.
You need to read it.
Self-Worth, or what is it called? Something?
I know that's the second one. I think it's called Worthy. I forgot what the first one's called.
Okay.
If I was in my office, I'd pull it off the shelf. But she tells the story of really just understanding how she was not a fit for everyone. And one of the biggest investors before, I think she sold her business for maybe hundreds of millions or maybe even close to $1 billion.
I think it was $1 billion, yeah.
$1 billion, yeah. And the investor said, look, hey, I don't believe that women are going to buy makeup from someone who looks like you. I mean, wow, like that's it. And listening to that and understanding, she said, like, yeah, I don't agree. I know we're solving a problem. And I really know that our products are connecting with women. I'm a woman. Yeah, you're not. It was a dude who said that, which is not surprising. And I don't know, by the way, whether I might not have said that at some point. So no judgment there. However, her experience with what she took and did with that statement was, I think, she said, rejection is protection. And that rejection from that particular guy, right? It's not about getting a no, I think she said. It's about getting a knowing. And she got a knowing, which was not for her, and that was okay. And I think, the fact that she's trying to teach that lesson, especially to women, I mean, kudos, love it. She's, good friends with Mel Robbins, or appears to be, and, another amazing person to look for, especially for women in terms of role models, to help people figure out their story and themselves in a way to really feel worthy, like, the second book she wrote. So I think it's really important for entrepreneurs, and especially women entrepreneurs, to be able to learn from others' experiences. But again, as I said, I think in the beginning, you tell me if I'm wrong, you kind of got to learn the lesson sometimes the hard way.
Yeah, definitely. Plenty of those. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Well, I love it. So much good stuff. So last question for you, because I love the focus that you had, and you're kind of evolving from millennials. And it's funny because I've actually had pretty good experiences with hiring millennials. Like, I've had some extremely hardworking, punctual, like all the opposite of what millennials are stereotyped as,
Well, I think it's because that's the type of person you're attracting to your business and your energy, right? And so, me too. I love usually I'm wearing my beads. I'm certainly wearing too tight jeans now, and, skinny jeans and high tops. However, I agree. I mean, my experience with them is they're amazing.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Great energy. So do you think if you're a millennial going out to kind of pitch a lot of investors, not all, a lot in my experience anyway, had gray hair and are much older, do you think that stereotype is still as strong? And is there anything they can do, like tactic wise, to try to eliminate that stereotype?
Let's talk about a couple of things. Millennials are now 28 to 42 or 43. So, I mean, 43 is not young anymore. I mean, it is young. Don't get me wrong. I wish I was 43 again. However, so now we have Gen Zs, right, which are, 20 to 28 and maybe alphas behind them.
So maybe just 20-year-olds, like the
Yeah,
younger, the
I
younger
mean,
generation.
here's the deal. People are people, and it really doesn't matter what age you are. However, there is a certain amount of experience that people have through age and through living, right? And so that's true. It doesn't mean young people can't have other experiences or different experiences. And so I think it's incumbent upon people to use their story and to use their platform or to be a people activator that demonstrates who they are, where they are, and more than anything, that they are willing to learn and grow, and that they understand that diversity of age, of color, of perspective really helps them grow. And if they're willing to do that. And so I think entrepreneurs that are younger should be cognizant of the fact that I don't know what I don't know, but I want to learn it, because I sure am at 60. I don't pretend to know everything. And so I think with that approach, they're probably going to be successful. And I think also to understand that, at least I believe this still to this day, where youth and experience meet is where magic happens. And I'm not saying you can't be youthful and have experience, but you need experience. Age is just a number. And sometimes, though, people that are old AF, like me, they've been around the block, or they've come to terms with themselves, certainly, which is, a large part of life. And the question is, what can you learn from other people? And there's so much, like you talked about, so many resources out there to learn, from books to podcasts. I mean, it's great podcasts on revenue intelligence and SaaS-based stuff from Gong, Revenue Intelligence podcast. There are great systems out there for HR and people that are technology now, like a company called Motivosity that kind of does reward and leadership and training and creating culture. Another great company out of Australia called Fingerprint for Success that has this AI-based coaching. We could actually put two people on top of each other, or a whole team, and see how you could get along, how you could ask for a raise, who should do the sales presentation, how would someone be in a role as a project manager. So, I mean, that stuff is fascinating. And those two companies with their leaders, there's just so much great stuff out there to learn. And so, again, young people just come with a mindset of growth and learning, and, do your research, do your homework, know your story, articulate it well, and you'll find the right connections.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think embracing the young energy, I definitely think makes sense. And I know for me, because I wasn't necessarily in my early 20s, I was 30, but I was brand new to this industry. Thanks. I still feel 30. I feel 25. That's the crazy part.
You and me both. Yeah.
But for me, it was okay, what I'm lacking, bring those people on my team. You know what I mean? Find the expertise and then just embrace my energy and, that kind of thing. But I love what you're saying about kind of acknowledge, what you don't know. Yeah, and here's why I have these people on my team, right?
Yeah, and seek mentors and seek learning experience and seek coaching. And you can get it from, hang around with the right people, the people you hang around with. Hang around with people that are going to push you and tell you when you're off, or when you're coming across a little bit too much, or when it seems like you're talking about yourself too much, or you're just over talking, or you're bleeding on someone, or you're not talking enough, or you're not expressive enough. But seek out people that want you to do your best and are willing to not only tell you what you do wrong, but to say your name in a room full of people that say, I love what Jayla's doing. I love what she's done, who she is, how she's done things. You should meet her. You should listen to her podcast. So be clear. You're not for everyone. Be clear of who you are. Attract to the right people, and then provide value to those people too, right? It's not a two-way street. And if you can kind of do those things, focus on understanding, connecting, and kind of how to implement a strategy where it's about the audience, customer, the employee, you're going to crush it. There's no question about it.
I love that. Well, Dan, you are amazing, and it's so fun to connect. And this is one of the things I was like so excited to do with this, is just to be able to connect with amazing people who are just like so ahead, thinking ahead too, is just so inspiring and incredible.
Let us know how we can help you. We are huge fans of you, what you've done, who you are, and what you want to bring to the world. So thank you for including me in this. And yes, it was great to catch up. And I love the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to include links to, you mentioned a breakout session, or what did you call that again?
A breakthrough. Yeah.
Breakthrough
session. We have a coaching breakthrough
that sounds
session
amazing.
where, call us and we'd love to help you. And we're speaking around the world, dan@dannegroni.com.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay. Thank you so much, Dan. We'll see you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.